la valiosa experiencia que compartirá con nuestra comunidad. Su trayectoria en la educación y la tecnología ha sido un impacto significativo más allá de las fronteras, inspirando a educadores, investigadores y profesionales de todo el mundo. Su participación no solo enriquece nuestro programa, sino que también refleja nuestro compromiso con la colaboración global, la innovación y el avance del conocimiento. Agradecemos sinceramente que haya viajado desde los Países Bajos para acompañarnos esta tarde. El doctor Peter de Jong es asesor senior e investigador en el campo del aprendizaje mejorado por tecnología en el Centro Médico de la Universidad de Leiden, en los Países Bajos. Su interés de investigación se centra en el aprendizaje en línea y semipresencial en la educación médica, así como en el uso de aplicaciones de realidad mixta y realidad virtual. Ha sido autor de varios artículos y ha presentado numerosas ponencias orales, así como carteles y talleres, además de ser un miembro activo de la Asociación Neerlandesa para la Educación Médica. Peter tiene una maestría en tecnología médica por la Universidad de Eindhoven y un doctorado en biofísica fisiología por la Universidad de Maastricht. Desde 2007, Peter ocupa en la Asociación Internacional de Educadores en Ciencias Médicas un lugar importante. Ha servido a IAMSE como miembro del Consejo Directivo, vicepresidente y como presidente del programa y anfitrión sede de la conferencia anual de IAMSE en 2009. En el año 2010 y hasta 2023, el Dr. de Jong fue el editor en jefe de la revista IAMSE, Medical Science Educator. Actualmente ocupa el cargo de presidente de la Asociación Internacional de Educadores en Ciencias Médicas, IAMSE. En nombre de la Facultad de Medicina de la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, le damos la más cordial bienvenida. Estamos seguros de que su ponencia será fuente de aprendizaje e inspiración para todos nosotros. Por favor, acompáñenme a recibir con un cálido aplauso al doctor Peter de Jong.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be here today at this university. And I'm very happy to give you a presentation today about technology in health professions education. I was already introduced. I'm indeed from Leiden University Medical Center. We have in our country 8 medical schools. That is enough for our little country. We have about 300 students every year coming in Leiden. But Leiden University is the oldest university in our country. This year we celebrate our 450th anniversary. So that's pretty old for a university. We have a lot of traditions. And we also have, since almost the beginning, a medical school. At that time, that was one of the reasons to start a university. I've been active also in IMC, International Association of Medical Science Educators. Currently the president, before I was the editor-in-chief. It's an association that really brings educators from the health professions together, because we want to learn from each other. We want to become better educators, and there's always something to learn, especially nowadays when technology goes that fast and with AI and all the kind of things. So that's why an association, we feel that's an association like ours is very important. Okay, if you look at education, we're going to look a few years back in education. Where are we coming from? And these are 3 nice pictures or paintings, if you wish, about education. If we look long time ago, 1500, education was, first of all, not for everybody, only for a very few happy people. And as you can see, it is a small group. It's a very small group with a teacher, and he's telling them about the knowledge that he has. The second one is a painting, a famous painting from Rembrandt van Rijn, one of our Dutch painters. And it shows an anatomical lesson, as you can see. There's something to see in the arm. It's a dead body, and they are teaching students. And again, small group, very, very small group teaching. When we go to almost 1900, you can see that teaching already becomes in much larger groups. That's what we are used to now. Large lecture halls with students in it. And I hear today that you have many more students than we have in our school. So I assume you also have lecture halls in this university. But that started at that time. So that's what we were used to. Nothing about technology, of course, because technology came later. However, technology is not something from the last few years. I found this one. This is around 1950. This is from Australia, because Australia, and maybe also in this country, by the way, there are a lot of areas that are very remote. And in Australia, there were people living where really nobody else was living. So children did not have the opportunity to go to school because there was no school around. And they solved that with radio. So there was a teacher somewhere in a little bigger city, and he was teaching students, and students could listen in through the radio. As you can see, they have I think a mother or something that is happening with that's helping this little boy to learn something. So it's a wonderful invention that you can, through technology, you can bridge that distance. This is distance learning. I think a very early example of technology. For us, for all of us, I think technology came really into our house, into our living room, when the personal computer came in. The personal computer, this is a nice example of an IBM personal computer. Maybe some of you remember how this thing looked like and how heavy it is. And it has only two colors. It's a black screen with green characters on it. It was introduced in the early 1980s. So that's 45 years ago. Then things went very fast, because all of a sudden computers were available for all of us. Before that, the computers, the computers with travel to the moon, there were computers there, but that were big computer centers, and that was not for the normal people. So from this time on, computers were available for teaching, and this is why we all recognize these kind of pictures like this. Students staring into a screen and doing some work on the computer. This is already an old picture, by the way, but students using computers in their study is, I think, a very normal thing now. I'm going to take you through a timeline from left to right, with a lot of things that happened during the time. So we're in the 80s. The computer is there. The personal computer is there. And one of the first things that were developed or used were these kind of things. Those are big discs with multimedia on it. This project was called Slice of Life. And on that disc, there were about 12,000, 13,000 images from pathology, from radiology, from anatomy. So most of them with microscopes, so that's why the name Slices of Life. It started in 1986 by 3 people in the University of Utah. And in this way, they could bring, with that disc, they could easily bring all those pictures into the classroom without going to the laboratory. It was not necessary to go for everything back to the microscope. In your teaching, in your large group teaching, you could use all those images. And the students could go through that images as well. If they were looking for an image about something, they could look in this big disc. This project went on until about 2007, so that's quite a long time. They had annual workshops, they came together, and they worked on all kinds of technology. And on the right, you see the lady that is Dr. Suzanne Stanzas, who started this project. So we have this now, very early start, doing something with images on a disk so that we can use it in other places. It took about 10 years, as you can see, before the web was invented, the World Wide Web. And maybe not everybody in this room knows the World Wide Web, but it's the first name of what we call the internet or something like that. That's what we call internet now. But it was very simple. You had very simple web pages that you could find some information about something. It was not very reliable at that time. It was not always correct information, but okay, it worked. And that's the reason why a few years immediately after that, the learning management systems were created. Blackboard, Brightspace, Canvas, I'm not sure, but you probably are using one of those systems here as well. Because it's possible now to put some information on the web, on the internet, so that students can go there, they can download it themselves, they can read things, all of the things that we are used now in our learning management systems. But of course, you need the web first, so that's why this came immediately afterwards. At the end of the 80s, the first mobile devices came. This little thing is about this big, very small, and it was called a personal digital assistant because doctors had an assistant, a personal assistant everybody had, but now there was a digital assistant, a PDA, and on that little device you could put some information. For example, some textbooks. That's what I remember from that time. So you could put a textbook on it, and the student could take this with him or her, for example, to the clinical rounds, put it in the pocket because it was small. And if there was a question or something to solve, then they had the textbook with them, really in their pockets, instead of a big textbook that you're not carrying around. Nowadays, we still have them, but they're useless. They are so small, there's so small memory, it doesn't work anymore. So it's just for the museum. And our phone, we all have a phone, and that phone that can do 10,000 more things than this little thing. But it was a start, and it was a start when small devices were created that you could carry around. Now we had some things going on about gaming, about open educational resources, and at some point, 2005, around that time, virtual worlds appeared. Second Life, maybe, is something that some people remember. It was on your PC, it was on a flat screen, two dimensionals, but anyway, there was some kind of computer-generated world, and there was a building that was a hospital, and you could go in it. You had a little avatar, so you were not yourself, but you were a little puppet was going around, and you could go into the hospital. You can find a patient. You could try to make that patient better. Very first beginning. Now our virtual worlds or our games are much more sophisticated than at that time. E-books, smart devices, massive open online courses, the very large online courses that you can follow for free. That was the whole idea behind it. It is free education for everybody. So that means wherever you are in the world, or even if you're not a university student, but just somebody else who wants to learn more about a topic, everybody had access. That was no problem. We still use them because they are most of the time they are very high quality. People spend a lot of time on making the best quality they could. So they're very useful. But they did not take over universities. So some people were afraid that universities were going away because everything was now online. But of course that didn't happen. Now we had learning analytics, classroom technologies, and augmented reality. I'm going to show you a few examples of that later on. Yeah, and then there's the last interesting thing in technology coming up in the last few years, which is called artificial intelligence, also technology. Not really something that we developed like the other things we kind of developed because we wanted to do something with it in education, but AI all of a sudden came out of the blue almost, and now is in our education, and we have to do something with it. We have to work with it. So we're going to talk about that also a little bit. Okay, these are a few examples of classroom technologies. little devices like the audience response system, so that you can ask a question to people in the audience and everybody has his own little device. Now we use our phone because that's much more easy. And you had a multiple choice question, and as a teacher you could easily see, okay, a lot of people think A, but also a lot of people think C, and C is wrong, so I will try to explain that. Very helpful in the classroom. Podcasts. Many of you still listen to podcasts, but you can also have a podcast on a specific medical topic so that the teacher is explaining something. In Leiden, we developed a few podcasts in our anatomical museum, because our museum is wonderful with all kind of preparations from very old days, but it's not allowed to go in with a big group, but we can send our students in with their own podcast and they can just study the materials that they want to study. And the third example is the hybrid classroom, having students in your classroom and online at the same time. This happened during the pandemic. We didn't do this before. There was no reason for us to do that because all our students live in Leiden. But in the pandemic it was different. It is a use of technology, of course, but it's not the most fun one. We don't like it so much. It's very difficult for a teacher to pay attention to the students, but also not to forget the people on the screen. It's not the best way of teaching, we think. We prefer to teach in person. This is an example of a TBL classroom. Some schools are very heavily using team-based learning as their teaching method. And for team-based learning, you can very well use classrooms that are really full of technology, with screens and with computer stations. So this is an example of schools that really make their classrooms dedicated with technology for the students to work in. Now, more regular forms of technology is maybe the e-learning lessons, little programs that you can start on your computer. And you can go through, you get some information, you get some questions to solve, maybe some videos to watch, those kind of things, some animations. And it can be on any topic. And e-learning lessons are used very broadly, I think, all over the world. We also see, for example, one in the laboratory that's really an e-learning that is meant to prepare your experiment before you go to the laboratory, so that you know a little bit better what to do and that you're not making so many mistakes in the lab, but that you can really have a good learning experience. In the next little movie, I'm going to show you a few examples of the work that our group is doing, things that we are creating. That is, for example, animations and graphics. Things like this make it so much more visible for students to understand what the teacher is talking about. These kind of animations are used in e-learning lessons to explain how machines work. This is for nursing, for example. This is an example of a lecture where teachers give a short lecture on the topic. And this e-learning lesson is an example. Patient simulations where students can type a question themselves and put it back in so that you can play a little bit with communication between patient and students. And this again is an example of using one of those images. I'm going to focus in a little bit on extended reality. Extended reality is a name that covers three kind of technologies, but they alter reality by adding something digital. That's what the word extended reality means. There are three types. One of them is virtual reality, the other one is augmented reality, and the third one is mixed reality. And by accident, we mix them up a lot of times. Sometimes we say the wrong word, and we did that ourselves in the past. So that happens, but they are very different technologies. The first one is virtual reality. And virtual reality is when you have a headset on like this person and you see a completely computer-generated environment. it looks like, yeah, maybe like a game. The gaming industry that is using virtual reality. So when you have that headset on, you really don't see anything else anymore. You can see that it's closed. That person cannot see anything outside the glasses. So you have to be careful. This person cannot go out of the door or down the stairs because he will absolutely have an accident. He cannot see. He only sees the environment, the world that he has in front of him. He can manipulate that world. He has the handsets, so he can push buttons. He can open doors. Whatever he can do in that environment, he can really interact. So we use this, for example, in our clerkships. The students, when they are close to getting into the clinical environment, into the hospitals, we have a very simple virtual reality simulation that simulates how our hospital looks like and what you can find there. So now they can walk into a room where a patient is without being there, because they do that in the classroom. You can see that on the right. But they can explore what's there to see, and they can also explore, for example, equipment that is there. If there's some kind of equipment, they can click on it and they get explanation. Okay, this is a monitor. This is showing the heart rate, blah, blah, blah. They can discover all kinds of things without going into that room, without bothering the patient. And they can already learn about what they're going to see in the next few weeks when they are really going into the hospital. Another example that we did with virtual reality is not a simulated world, but a video recording. This is a video recording of a kidney transplantation. This is a real kidney transplantation, a real patient, real doctors. This really happened several years ago. And we just recorded that by video, by 360-degree video, so it's something that looks around. So the students can put up the headset and they can also look around. If they turn themselves around, they can see what is happening behind them in the other side of the room. And they can exactly follow how an operation like that works, what the nurse is doing or not doing, why certain people are in this room, everything. They can see everything, how that actually goes. They can also hear what is being said. So this is very learning. That's a very nice learning experience for them. And we use this because we don't want to send our 300 students in an operating setting like this. That's impossible. So they will never see this. They maybe they were going to see it one day when they are an intern in this area, but otherwise they will never see it. And now we can have them experience that already in the first or the second year of medical school. And we can talk about it and we can explain why there are nurses and that they have an important role. So this is very helpful to bring them into a situation where they otherwise were not allowed to go. And this, the third one example that I have, is a little bit from a different perspective, because now this has been created for the nurses. So the nurses put up the headset and they see themselves in a world where they are, it's kind of a movie where they are in a bed and they are being prepared to go into surgery. But from your room to the surgery room, we bring you there. And there are some nurses that help you and they bring the bed there and they talk to you. And if they talk to you in a very nice way, you feel very relaxed and you say, okay, I'm going into surgery. But if those nurses talk to you in a very bad way, you get a little bit anxious and you don't want to go into surgery anymore because you got afraid. And that feeling, like, okay, I feel afraid now, that is what we have those nurses that are wearing the headset really feel, they really experience, like, I don't want to be here. And what we want to try to teach them is the communication skills of the people. So that next time, if they bring a patient to the surgery room, that they really know what to say and what not to say and in which way. From virtual reality, we go to augmented reality. And augmented reality is a little bit different. There's no headset here. Very simple. You only need a device with a camera. So a tablet, for example, or a phone or a smartphone. And with the camera, you go into the direction of some object, and all of a sudden the computer, the augmented reality, gives you more information. You can see that on the screen of the tablet. There's a number 1, a number 2, a number 3. So you can click on it and you can get more information. This is the chest. This is all the things that you can see in the model. You get information about. Now you get an explanation, and you can use this here. This is a medical application. You can do that on everything, on any object that we want to give more information to the user. You can do this. You can use this technology. We don't use this so much in our school. So this is just a technology that exists, but we don't really, we don't have so many examples of that. We do have some experience with this type of virtual reality that's called mixed reality. This also uses a headset, as you can see, but this is a different headset. This is one that you can still look through. It's kind of a sunglasses, a big sunglasses, but you can still see each other. You can still see the chairs, stairs. You can still go outside, no problem. But you also see a hologram that is projected to you. So that lag, what we see here in the picture, that lag is not there. In reality, there is no lag, there's just empty space. But those two people, they see something there in the air, just they see a lag. And the fun thing to do with this is that the teacher, he can manipulate that object. So in this case, it's a lag. So he can say, okay, let me remove all the muscles. That's one click, and then all the muscles are gone. But then you can see there are still bones, there are still nerves. So as a teacher, you can quickly manipulate this hologram and explain the things that you want to explain. And this is very difficult to do this in reality because we cannot do that so quickly with a real lag and say, okay, let me just remove the muscles. That's not done in 2 seconds, but here you can immediately do that and see what the result is. So in teaching, this can be very, very instructive for people to explain what is quite difficult to explain with the real things in our hands. So here technology really offers us something that we cannot do without technology. This is an example of anatomy, of course. We also, again, in our clerkships, those are smaller groups, so that works a little bit more easy than the 300. In our clerkship internal medicine, the students are being prepared to listen to the song, to the lung sounds by using this technology, because there you can see on the right, they are practicing on each other. But because of the glasses, they can see kind of on that body of their colleague, they can see where the lungs are and where the lungs not are. So then that helps them to understand, this is why I hear lung sounds on this place, but that's why I do not hear anything if I put it there. So they can practice a little bit. They understand much better what they are doing because they can see inside the body. And that helps them a few weeks later when they are really going to work with patients. And then they understand much better, like, okay, this is what I have to look for. That's why I have to look over there and not here. And another application that we are using is the same thing, but then for making ultrasounds. Making ultrasounds is also not an easy thing. You probably know that. If you do a little bit too much like this or that, then you don't have a good picture, a good view. But because with the glasses on, with augmented reality thing, you can see a little bit what is supposed to be in the body at that place. So that makes you understand much better, okay, this is why I'm very successful if I do it like this, but not so much if I do it like that. So all kind of ways to prepare students. Now, the last thing that happens in our timeline and the last thing that we are hard working on today, all of us, I think, is AI. So AI is also technology. It is everywhere. It has been around, and it will not go away. We all understand that. That's almost with everything. Everything that is invented stays in one way or another. This will also not go away. But what exactly is artificial intelligence? It is technology. Simple. It is just technology. But now computers, they can do for us some things that before we needed somebody to help us. Normally we have a person doing some things, but now we created some device or computer thing that can do things for us. And it can be in all kind of areas, like something with visual, something with speech recognition. There are all kind of things that you can use computers for. And I think you probably have several of these examples maybe in your own life. If you call to some service provider, you will probably not get somebody on the phone, but you have to go to a chatbot first and explain what your question is, and maybe you get the answer already. Maybe you have a little thing on your table at home, like the Alexa, and then you can scream and say, "Hey Google, can you put on the lights in the kitchen?" And then the lights in the kitchen go on. That is artificial intelligence already. We use that already for years, because normally we need a person to put the light on in the kitchen, and now we can just yell at the thing, and the thing makes sure that our light goes on. The recommendations in the systems. Once you have watched a movie at Netflix, then Netflix says, "Hey, now you finished this one. Maybe this one isn't interesting for you because I know that you like Western movies." That's the computer is thinking, a little bit thinking, and giving us advice what to do next. Fraud, detection of fraud within financials, within banking. Self-driving cars. Those are getting more and more happening. Image recognition. You see that on airports. That happened to me several times now, that you don't have to even show your passport when you're boarding a plane. You don't have your passport. You look into the camera and it says, "Okay, this is Peter. Peter was supposed to be on this flight. He's in that chair. He can go in." So I don't have to show my passport and my boarding pass anymore. He only recognized my face. And we have a lot of computer recognizing software in the hospital, where images, X-ray images, MRI images are already detected by the computer, and sometimes the computer sees things that our doctors do not see immediately. So it is already everywhere. It's not something very new. And also coming on a trip like I did to come here to your country, if you go by car, maybe you need to call an Uber, but you're using GPS, you're using Google Maps to know where to go. And Google Maps is already advising me, because if there's somewhere traffic, then Google Maps says you better go to the right here, because otherwise you get stuck. Then I deliver my suitcase somewhere, and I hope that I will see my suitcase again when I arrive, which happened, by the way. My suitcase was there, but the whole kind of computer systems that going to the airport to keep track of my suitcase. And also with security, we all know that you have to put your bag in the machine, and that's an X-ray. But there's much more than an X-ray. There's a computer system on the airport watching all those X-rays. And that computer system sometimes feels like, this morning there's something wrong on this airport. There's activity on this airport that I don't trust. And maybe there is some kind of terrorism going on. So those computers are already sensing, because there are so many people coming in with bags with I don't know what in it. There's something wrong today. So that kind of computer technology is very good that we have it. And of course the autopilot system. The plane flies almost by itself. If you're lucky, then after a half hour after takeoff, then you see the captain coming through the cabin, and the captain is not flying. The pilot is not flying the plane. He's just going to talk to people. The plane is all flying by itself. Artificial intelligence is kind of four kind of things. First of all, robotics. I think robotics is not at all new. We know our cars are being made by robots already for many, many years. There are not so many people working in the auto industry anymore. machine learning, where the computer recognizes patterns in things, some things that are happening over and over, then the computer recognizes that, or image finding patterns in images. Neutral networks, that's one of the pillars of artificial intelligence. And the last one, that's the one that we are dealing now with, or that at least most people are a little bit concerned about, is the natural language processing. All of a sudden, the computer can come up with language for us. It can give us written essays. You just give him a little bit of an order, and he brings you a wonderful essay back. That's because the computer got so smart, in some ways smart, that he can use so much information to create something that really looks good. And it can be text, it can be a picture, it can be more kind of things. If you want to know more about what kind of things we are using with AI in medical education, maybe this publication is of interest. It's already from last year, so we have to really be careful because times goes very fast and technology even faster. So this is a scoping review of what has been reported in the literature as examples of using in medical education, and these are a few of the things that were found. It can be anything. It can be patient simulations where AI is used. It can be generating questions or answers that can be helpful for a teacher if the teacher wants to some help with developing questions, but it can also be helpful for students. If a student says, okay, give me a few questions on this topic because I want to practice myself, I just want to learn, create me a few questions. Some things with assessment are being used, chatbots, of course. So we see there are several places in medical education where AI is being used. If you're looking at the examples that we just saw, in fact, most of them are very easy things. This is a model that explains a little bit if technology is skyrocket or not, or if it's simple or very complicated. The top level is substitution. That's very simple. Just you have something in real life and you replace it by something digital, like a paper, just something on paper, and you make a PDF out of it. That's simple. While the lower level, the redefinition, is really working with the holograms. Then you are really doing something with technology that is not possible before. And if you look at all those examples in that review, then most of them are just on the lower levels, like substitution and augmentation. Technologically, not that very exciting. There are only a few things that AI is really doing in the higher levels, modification and redefinition. What is generative AI? That's the last of the fourth pillar. That's the AI that we are now working with a little bit. You can ask a question to the AI and it comes back with a text or an image, or can create a video or a song. We have some examples of songs that have been written and sung by a computer. So they are generating something for us. We also use that in our school. We are very careful with it, of course, like you probably are. But these are a few simple examples. We have one teacher that creates something on purpose with AI and then let the students look at it and discuss it. And is this really make sense what it says, or is this maybe nonsense? So it really is more focusing on critical thinking. Is this text, what you see here, is that possibly created by a computer and maybe not correct? There is another teacher that is really say, okay, you write an essay for me and I'm fine if you use ChatGPT. Go ahead. But I want you to tell me exactly what's questions that you used. So the prompts, it should be a high quality thing. So don't bring in some rubbish, but do your best, make a nice piece of it. And you have to really reflect on it, what you did. And then we're going to talk about it. So he's really using AI and let the students experience like, okay, it works very well, but I really have to think. I have to be very careful with my prompts, and I have to look at the end. I really have to look for myself. Is this now still correct? Am I going to submit this or not? You can use it for text improvement. I think maybe some of us, or all of us, maybe some use that sometimes, and that's maybe nothing wrong with it. If your text, if you write the text first and then AI can polish it a little bit and make it more better to read, why not? You can also use it in communication training. You can talk to the chatbot and you get something back and you can talk again and you can have some kind of conversations. Sometimes that does not go well. Then it turns around. We have some examples that the patient all of a sudden becomes the teacher, and so not good. But anyway, that's an option that we can work with. And you can search for information. Sometimes AI is, for some students, AI is even easier to find than their own teacher. That's of course not so good, but if that happens, it can help you on the spot. Sometimes AI can explain things very well and say, okay, if a student really doesn't understand how something works, okay, can you explain that to me in normal words, in normal language? And then that can be helpful for students. But yeah, okay, then what is the future going to bring? How is the future going to look? I think artificial intelligence will have an impact on our education. Artificial intelligence has an impact on everything. But how much? And will it replace an educator? Now, before we go to that question, I want to show you one completely different example. This is a picture of a car. You can see that. The picture is taken about 4 or 6 weeks ago by a colleague of mine in LA. And in LA, those self-driving cars, they are already available for the normal people like us. We can book a car like that. I think you need an app or something to call him. And then you say, okay, I want to drive to that place. You get in the back door and then hope for the best, because then the car is going to drive all by itself and it brings you to your address. It's technologically, it's very, very sophisticated. It uses a lot of information. It uses the maps. It uses the actual situation on traffic, but also small details, because some person is crossing the street and he recognizes that and he knows, okay, I have to go around it, whatever. So it's very technologically, it's very smart, but it already exists. So think about, it's now 2025. What about 75 years from now, in the year 2100? Hopefully we're still alive, or not we are alive, but the world is still alive. Maybe all the cars are replaced by self-driving cars. Why not? They are electrical, probably. Why are we still driving ourselves? So why do we need to drive? But then, if that's the case, why do we need driver's lessons? Do we need driver's lessons if we are not driving ourselves? The car is driving. And do we need teachers to teach us how to drive? We don't need them anymore, probably. So this piece of education in the world is going to disappear. There will no driver schools anymore. Why? Because there's nobody's driving. We just get in the back of the car and it brings us. So for the long run, AI will have an impact on education, even medical education. Well, we don't believe today, like, oh, it's not possible. Computers taking over my work. How is that possible? But there will be changes, small changes. And if we wait for a long time, there will be big changes. So I showed you a few pictures, those people in 1500, small group teaching. That was the education from that time. They probably didn't realize that in 1600 they were cutting in dead bodies and showing students how the body works. The people in 1500 didn't even imagine that it was possible. These people in 1600 could never believe that there were classes of 300 or 1,500 or 2,000 first-year students. They couldn't imagine that because it was a small group teaching. How is that possible? Those people in 1900 could never imagine that our students are looking into a box, a metal box that's on the desk. What do you do with that? No, that's our teaching nowadays. We teach our students to that box. But they couldn't imagine that in 1900. Nobody was thinking about 12,000 or 15,000 images on a disk. And maybe nowadays even more, by the way. Nobody was imagining that you could look through kind of a device and then see all kind of information. And nobody could ever believe that we were talking to holograms that are hanging in the air and that we can teach our students. So the thing is, I don't know what next will be, and you don't know, we don't know. But all those people in that timeline, they didn't imagine that it was possible, and it became possible. So we don't know exactly what the future will bring for medical education. I think AI, technology, and this special type of technology, that will be in the infrastructure of medical education somewhere. It can be good, it can be personalized for students, very on their demands, what they need, what they want to know, when they want to know it. So that those are maybe good things. There are not so really boundaries anymore where you need to be or when do you have to be there. The curriculum will also change, but I think that we see that already happening. I assume that in your curriculum, you are also already thinking about we need to teach our students a little bit about AI and how things are used in the hospital and what does it mean if you look at an image knowing that the computer already looked at it, and do you trust that computer? So all those kind of things you are probably teaching to your students already. We also started with those kind of things in our curriculum. You also have to think about ethics and all kind of things that are changing because now the computer is involved. And also assessment will change. We are used to exams, to have some kind of measurements all through the year, how our students are doing. Maybe we work with portfolios. But if we have so many computer technology involved in all the things that we do, you have to realize that the computer knows more about our students than we know about the students. So the computer can at some point start giving advice and say, okay, I see this student do this in the first year and that in the third year. You know what? My computer advice would be this student is ready to become a medical doctor or not. So we can have a lot of help from that computer system, maybe without having any exams, because we have that information somewhere that we cannot see, but it will be there. The educator, I already mentioned. Will the educator be gone? No, I think not. For some routine things, maybe the educator is not necessary anymore, because teaching in the classroom, standing here, reading from my textbook that I already published, that's not really useful. So some parts can disappear because the computer or the students can find that information, and also the explanation and some background in a very different way. But the educator will be there because he will not so much be maybe content provider, but much more a mentor or an interpreter of meaning. Try to help the students understand, okay, what is it that you have to do now with this? Because now we found some information, but what does it mean? And what does it mean for this particular patient? Because an outcome, you all know that a kind of diagnosis and a treatment plan is maybe different for somebody from 80 years old than somebody from 40 years old, because maybe you make a different decision there. Okay, we're not going to do this in this case, but we are going to do that in that case. So that's what we really need to help our students with. So the teacher is really necessary, and also for the humanity in our profession. But it will go from information transfer for more to wisdom transfer. Same thing with diagnostic reasoning. Machines can tell us very fast what it is, but we have to decide what matters. So doctors of the future, they really have to be very well trained in how to ask questions to the computer. The prompting is very important. If you are not used to you don't ask the right question, then you will not get the right answer, or not the complete answer. You always have to think as a doctor about biases or context, because the computer system can come up with what is quite common in the world, but maybe that's not exactly what works best in Mexico for some reason. You always have to have that second opinion. Communication with the patient is an important thing that we have to be able to do. And making the decisions, maybe the computer should not make the decision, but it can give strong advice or can collect all the data that you need, but in the end, you make the decision. So machines, they reason much faster. I think we all have to admit that computers can be so fast with things, but we have to be the wise person in the room. So last slide. Medical schools, we will have to think about our curriculum, but also about training our faculty. Very different. Our faculty, our teachers, they have to know about AI, what it is, how it works, how you can use it, about the ethics around it, about the systems around it. So it's important for them to know that. So we really have to work on that. Maybe for the future, if the role of the teacher changes, then maybe also your rules for promotion and tenure inside of your schools have to change a little bit, because teachers are not doing anything anymore, the things that they were doing 50 years ago. So you should change that as well. And teachers will be working not on their own anymore. They will also work with computer systems to develop the best possible teaching they can provide. So this was an overview from very long time ago, when it started a little bit with things that we like very much, to an area where we are now, where we are still with a lot of question marks. We don't know exactly where it's going, but it's going to be exciting where it's going. So I hope this was a nice overview for you. And if there's any time left, then I'm happy to answer some questions. Thank you.
Bueno, viene la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. We're going to have a question and answer. Pueden hacer su pregunta en español o en inglés, como ustedes prefieran. Vamos a tener un micrófono aquí al lado para que ustedes puedan preguntar. Nada más alcen la mano.
Gracias. Bueno, ¿me ayudas?
Sí, por supuesto.
Bueno, voy a plantear la situación y luego hago la pregunta, ¿no? La situación la voy a plantear en español, entonces me ayudas a traducirla.
Yeah.
Perfecto.
So he's going to give a situation and then he'll give the question.
Yo uso habitualmente la inteligencia artificial en muchas actividades y la situación aquí es que hay varias fallas que genera, como el querer satisfacer al usuario, el generar fabulaciones, fallas de memoria de lo que recuerda, y también llega a presentarse pues información falsa, o lo que le llaman también alucinaciones de la IA, ¿no? En este sentido, una de las cosas que he hecho para instruirla es poner un código de ética y de conducta, y también de aspectos epistemológicos. La situación aquí es, uno lo sabe y lo piensa por lo que ha estudiado. El gran problema es que los estudiantes novatos o las personas que a lo mejor no tienen el conocimiento pueden hacer preguntas y pueden ocupar la IA confiando completamente en lo que va a decir y hacer.
So let me give a little bit of the context so far. So as he's using IA, sometimes there's a lot of problems, for instance, with user satisfaction, also in generating like memory problems, hallucinations in IA. So what he does is he places ethical conduits within the system, epistemological conducts as well. And he's worried oftentimes that people like students who are new in using this, or maybe people who are new in using IA, don't necessarily do this.
Perfect. ¿Qué hacemos en este sentido?
What are ways that we can combat this, or what could we use, or what can we do to change this?
Gracias.
Yeah, you do mention some important things. The hallucination thing is mentioned very often. I think we are with technology. I think we are now in kind of a phase in between, because this now is available and it starts working, and we have to get used to working with it. But the technology will also improve over time. When we look back to the introduction of the World Wide Web, Internet, and Google, we were all of a sudden there was a lot of protest, and people were angry because students were going to Google something, and then they found something, an answer, and of course it's wrong, because where does it come from? And that's correct. Sometimes it comes from some fake website with wrong information. Sometimes it comes from a resource. And still, I'm not sure how long Google was ago, but 20 years later, we are not so upset about Google anymore. We all use Google and we kind of trust it, but we also learned how to recognize immediately if something is not correct. So it took us some time to get used to that and to learn to work with it. And I think that's also here. We got, all of a sudden 2 years ago, we got AI on out of the blue. And yes, AI is making mistakes, but I think that will also go a little bit away, because the systems are going to be more perfect in the future, and we are going to be trained for ourselves. We are getting smarter to use this new thing. So the things that you are worried about, that's correct. We should be worried about that now. But I also think that over many years, that will go away. Maybe some new things come that we are worried about then, but these we will find a way to work with it. Does it make sense? But at this time, in this place in time, we have to be very careful, because it's new to all of us, and we are not, and our students, and nobody's really well trained in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, Dr. De Jong, thank you very much. It was very nice. I think that we are all concerned and now using this type of new technologies. My question is more about the innovation that you showed at the end. You said we should be transmitters of wisdom, and you had there the word innovation. In this sense, the ways that medicine is now applied is changing a lot. For instance, the medical doctor needs to know how to use a robot, how to use very new technological devices, how to read in a computer images and information that is given with those new devices. Also new materials, for instance, for surgeries or replacement of parts of the body, there are new materials. So my point is, how are you applying this in for the medical student? Because the medical student then would need to learn about robotics, about materials, about how to read the information that the computer is providing, which requires that then you change the whole curriculum of the students. What do you think about that?
Those are changes that are coming. The robot thing is a good example. We know that robots can do medical procedures now, and I think it's used more and more. Not everywhere yet, but it's happening. So those doctors who are using that, they should know about it. I think medicine became much more complicated than it was in that painting of 1632, because they only knew a few things. And we have a wonderful botanical garden in our university, and that was just for having little plants to give to the patient when he had something. And that's not what we do anymore now, because we have much better medications. Medications, pharmacy is, by the way, also a topic that is so much growing that students need to be more and more, need to know more and more about. So those things are going slowly. Our curriculum is already compact. Sometimes we don't know where to put something new because has something else to go out. So I don't exactly know, but we have to find a way to cope with it, because we talked about now information and how we have to make sure that we all learn how to judge that information and to understand what the computer brings, that how you can use that as a doctor and which parts are important. Yeah, that's a good question. We cannot have medical school of 20 years long, because that's probably not useful, by the way, because when you graduate, then you're so old-fashioned because you're not up to date anymore. So I'm not sure how we have to solve that. Some things will maybe there are some things that will go away in our curriculum, and I'm sure that we will all be upset if I said that, because all the teachers are very proud on what they teach, and nobody will say my part can go away. But maybe some parts are maybe in the knowledge area or so. Maybe there are so much things that students can get in another way than teaching, that they can that in the curriculum we can really pay more attention to the other things that are really, really necessary in the future. But it's a lot. It's a lot to, yeah. But the world is changing so fast. We have to keep up, otherwise. So it's a difficult question.
Give a little bit more of that idea. When we receive a student in the first year, that student will be a medical doctor in 10 or 15 years. When the technology is completely advanced, so we would need to see how to incorporate the newest technologies when they start.
And we would need to include that, because in 10 or 15 years, they should be available to use that new technology.
Maybe it's not so much about the technology, and maybe because the technology changes all over, maybe it's more about the thinking about it. The way of thinking is going to be very different for us than it was 200 years ago. So that might be the more important thing, to prepare our students on to a world that is changing very quickly. If I have a mobile phone like you have, I guess, there are apps on it. They change so often, and I don't get a new course to use my new app, because I can reason myself, okay, this must be kind of the same thing. What changed, and now I use the other one. So it is that mindset that you are better prepared on the changes, because you are right. We don't have to teach them a specific technology, because 10 years later, that technology kind of thing is still there, but it has evolved. But you have to have the skills to think and to reason, so that you can handle that in the future with everything that's going to happen.
Es decir, veo que finalmente se continúa haciendo lo mismo, pero con ayuda de las máquinas. Mi profesor de anatomía aplicaba la realidad aumentada cuando decía, detrás de este músculo encuentras la arteria y el nervio, y lo señalaba con el dedo. Ahora lo vamos a hacer con máquinas. Y se presupone que las máquinas pueden predecir todo. El problema es lidiar con la complejidad, con los sistemas que tienen respuestas emergentes que las máquinas no van a poder detectar, para reconocer patrones de un cuadro clínico y aplicar un protocolo las máquinas siempre serán mejores que nosotros. Esta salud es una salud reactiva, centrada en el hospital, y debemos entender la salud como una incapacidad de adaptarse a los retos del entorno, o la capacidad más bien de adaptarse a los retos del entorno, y cuando esto no ocurre bien, entonces se producen distorsiones metabólicas que llevan a la enfermedad. Deberíamos de mapear lo que ocurre.
Si me da un segundo y ahorita lo intento. Y aparte se me juntaron todos, entonces déjenme ver, no sé si me están. Hold on, students. Es que creo que eliminé por usar esto y no un lápiz y papel. So basically, bottom line. A ver si recuerdo. In health, it's become kind of very difficult to use the machine learning and to use technology. And he mentions that it's just a little bit more complex because back in the days, augmented reality was used, for instance, in showing that there's an artery or, like a nerve, but you pointed it with your finger. And now you use technology. That's supposed to be a joke. And now it's a bit more complex. And we have a lot more experience using technology nowadays. Machines may be better than humans. And he mentioned, the doctor mentioned as well, or that right now we're in reactive health. So, we have to adapt to our surroundings, and particularly as in technology. The question hasn't arrived yet. That's just the context.
No, el problema es predecir el comportamiento de los sistemas adaptativos complejos, Complex Adaptive Systems. Y las máquinas no han logrado hacer eso. Las máquinas relacionan un cuadro clínico, como lo hacemos nosotros, en pensamiento rápido, con un protocolo. Pero necesitamos sacar la salud al entorno, a donde se enferman las gentes, es en su casa, en la calle, cuando comen, afuera. Entonces, pensar en enseñar una salud 5.0, una salud humanocéntrica y no tecnocéntrica, y crear una revolución conceptual.
Okay. A ver. So it's not so much a question, ¿no? No es una pregunta como tal. Okay. So there is a complex adaptive systems are not yet perfect. So you need machines that have quick thinking and action. Maybe we're not there yet, but we're getting there to have sort of health 5.0 and we need to focus or switch, although we are there, but maybe focus a lot on human-centered conceptual revolution. It was a comment. Okay.
The topic of humanity and those kind of things are mentioned very often. Like, are we going to a world that's only ruled by computers system? And I think we all kind of agree that should not happen. Those are very important things in life, and we are working with patients, and so. But I don't know the answers, but we are really shifting and we are changing, and some things will become much more important than were in the past, and some things are not maybe necessarily anymore, become much easier than in the past. So it's really a changing world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, hello, I'm a student from the last year, and my question is like to see both sides about teachers and students, because I want to know the mindset that we need to have. As a student, I remember that in the first year, my teachers didn't allow me to use the iPad because it was one thing that they don't know, and they saw, and they believed that I was playing or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, how can we face that some technologies are not related with the classic way to study? That is the first question. And the second question is like, some new technologies are based in the basic knowledge that we have. So maybe we want to see the newest thing, but doesn't give us too much new knowledge. So that is the second question. How can we check what is useful and what is not useful, and not to be just like very surprised just because it's new?
missed your first question a little bit. You were not allowed to use it in your first year, you said. And what was your question connected to that?
The mindset from the teachers.
Yeah.
How can we explain that the technology is not so bad in just because they don't know the technology? That doesn't mean that we are playing or like that.
You are playing for technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm afraid you're addressing a problem which is called generations. That happens all the time in life, and the younger generations like you, the students. I always talk about it, but I did not experience that myself. But I talk about it. You grew up in a very different world that many of us, or the older people in this room, grew up. When I got a phone, the only thing that we used a mobile phone for was to put it on while I was in the car, because in case my mother was going to look for me. And when I arrived, it was not necessary anymore. That was the only 2 hours in the day that my phone was on, because that's what we believed. Nowadays, I don't think you have only your phone on for 2 hours in the day. So there are very different views between generations, and that's okay, because we were raised in a very different time, and many of us are raised or born in a time that there was no technology. And you, the younger, the students of today, they come really from a world that is. So you ask me how to persuade the teachers that it's okay to use technology. That is because they're a little bit stubborn, because they are from that time that we didn't have technology and we didn't understand it. So don't be too bad with them. They cannot help it, but it will change. And what we can try to do is train them, faculty development, also show them. And that is what we are doing. We also had teachers in the beginning, and I think our university in the beginning said, AI, it's forbidden, never use it. Well, we have found some ways now that it can be very well used. And it's even more, maybe it's more wise to work with the students and to make them understand and learn how to use it well, than say no, because we all know what happens if you say no to your child. They are going to do it. So you can better maybe work together and find a way that we can use it very well. And we are doing that now. We are finding ways that we can use that technology also in your first year, also in the assignments that you get. So yeah, I think you are a little bit frustrated that you're in that position, but that happens with that happens with every new thing in technology, especially in the last few in these times, because things are going so fast. So older generations have more problems with adapting than the younger generations. And where you said something about where the knowledge is coming from. That's also something that I said in the beginning. That also will improve. So those technologies will find more information from other sources, from valuable sources, from scientific sources. So overall, we will get much closer and closer and closer to what is really correct. And that sometimes we are in a beginning now that it's not yet, and we have to be careful, but it will be better. I hope. I think.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I wonder how you at the Leiden University have managed the introduction of professors and students on projects of development of technology like artificial intelligence for education. Because I think we have to pass the characters like only users of this technology. I think we have to try to give the ethic problems, the pedagogical problems into the technology specifically for our use. The other things I think is how do you introduce this kind of work, the work with technology, into the curriculum of professors, and how it improved the career of the academic implied? That's all. Thank you.
When something new comes up, like with AI, that's often something like a shock. That's something happening, and that's always with those kind of. I think we can call this a disruptive technology. It's all of a sudden it shakes up everybody, and we're kind of in panic. So in the beginning, it's kind of a little bit everybody's in panic. Also at university, but now we are 2 years later. So in Leiden. These topics, they are addressed in the qualifications, in the courses that teachers have to follow to have that. Yeah, we don't have a license for teachers, but teachers need a qualification. They do need to follow courses, because otherwise we don't think that they are good enough to teach. And technology is integrated in that. So we do train our teachers. Once the shockwave was over, we have that included now. So that's the way to do that. In the curriculum, things are. I think we are finding good examples of how we can use it. We have teachers that try things like the few simple examples that I gave. We now know, okay, this is a great example to do. This is an example which is not good to do, and we try to. With internally, with symposia and that kind of stuff, we try to share that knowledge between our teachers, so that other teachers can also start using the technology in the right way, in a good way in their teaching. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were asking, but that is the way that we try to keep up. We are, of course, you're always late because the disruption already happened, so we're always after the fact, but we are really working on that. That is an interesting question. In our country, the academic world is not so much connected with commercial world. Of course, in research, that's very different. In medical research, that's very different. You work with companies with all kind of stuff. In teaching and in academics, in our country, not so much. We do have in the university a central innovation kind of group that is creating an AI environment that is closed and local for our university, so that we don't have unwanted impact from outside, those kind of things. So I think we are doing that more in ourselves and not so much with commercial ones, but that's also part of the culture in our country.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you about, you think that someday AI mixed reality or VR will be realistic enough to substitute face-to-face practices such as dissections, and what would be the balance between face-to-face practices and the use of technology?
That's a very good question. The examples that I showed are just pieces that you use in your curriculum. So you can work with the virtual reality environment, so that you can practice a little bit how it is in reality, but you are still going in the real reality. Systems will become better. Some of you, if you use ChatGPT, you will notice that he already becomes emotional, or he has some feelings, how wonderful your question was. And so those things are getting there. They are not natural, of course, there, but so I can imagine that simulations get more human like that to simulate. But again, we have to make the step somewhere. We have to make the step also because we are working with real patients and real people in the end. So we should not rely only on technology, but we have to keep seeing. I think we have to see technology as a help, and it can give students more opportunity to practice in things. But it doesn't mean that that medical school will only be technological supported. It's also a mix of real working with real people, working with real patients. But technology can speed up maybe a little bit what you are learning and give you more things to look into. It's a help. It's an assistant.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bien, muchísimas gracias, señoras y señores. A continuación, la doctora Ana Carolina Sepúlveda Vildoso, la directora de nuestra Facultad de Medicina de la UNAM, hará entrega a nuestro distinguido invitado, el doctor Peter de Jong, de un reconocimiento que le otorga por su brillante conferencia de este día. Adelante, por favor. Yo les quiero invitar nuevamente a que le demos un gran aplauso a nuestro invitado por su conferencia. Y antes de dar por terminado, no sé si la doctora va a decir algún comentario.
He wants a picture with you.
Oh.
Like this? Yeah.
Y si nos acompañan tanto el doctor como la doctora al frente del público para tomar una fotografía con todos los presentes, a los cuales les invitamos a acercarse al centro y ponerse de pie para una fotografía que conmemora este día de esta conferencia. Por favor, si son tan amables, le pedimos al doctor de Jong acercarse al centro. Podemos prender las luces, por favor. Si se acercan hacia el centro del auditorio para que estén agrupados para esta fotografía, se los agradecemos mucho.
De este lado, por favor.